Aloha, it is Dave Lawrence. How you doing? A big mahalo for tuning in. Today we have a legendary musician joining us on the line. He's one half of a musical brand that has made hits heard around the world for decades. On March 5th at the Blaisdell Arena, we will likely be hearing a whole lot of them as his band's Do What You Want, Be What You Are tour hits the islands for a single date. It is a great pleasure to welcome this extremely talented, down-to-earth, charismatic artist for a conversation. I offer a humble aloha and mahalo to respected solo artist and from Hall & Oates, John Oates. Aloha, Brother John.
Dave, man, great to talk to you.
You too, man, and a big mahalo. Thank you for being willing to do this.
Oh, man, thanks a lot. I can't wait to get to Hawaii.
Now, what's your when was the last time that you were actually here in the islands?
Last year. I was in Kauai for a vacation with my family in August, and I was hanging out with Donovan Frankenreiter, who's become a buddy of mine and who I've toured with and wrote some songs with, and I actually have performed with a number of times. So I'm getting a Hawaii connection going.
That is huge, and that's great that you say that, because literally last year I was interviewing Donovan too, and I saw that he's on your 7908 Aspen Songwriters Festival lineup, and meant to ask you, how did you hook up with him and find your way to Hawaii?
It was an interesting thing. I live in Aspen, Colorado, and I was here one day, and the phone rang, and a very good friend of mine from the radio station said he was interviewing Donovan, and they were talking about legendary mustaches, because, you know, he sports one.
That's right.
And he was saying how he was rocking the mustache, trying to keep the great tradition of Oates' mustache alive. And it was just a funny thing. And the friend of mine who works at the radio station said, well, let's call John. He's probably in town. And I was here, and Donovan invited me down to the club where he was playing with his band and asked me to jam with him. And I did. And we really hit it off musically and personally. And one thing led to the other. We stayed in touch, and he asked me to come on the road with him about a few months ago, and did a short tour of the Midwest with him. We wrote a tune, and I said, hey, man, you got to come out to my Songwriters Festival. So he's coming.
It's really hot. And tell me about your visit out to the Garden Isle. What was that all about?
Well, I'm no stranger to Hawaii. I've been coming for many, many years, and I've visited, I think, most of the islands at this point. And it's just, it's Hawaii. It's what can you say? All I know is I'm looking at a gigantic blizzard right now out my window, getting on a plane tomorrow, go to Japan, and at the end of the Japanese tour, we finish in Hawaii, and that sounds like a pretty good plan to me.
That's an excellent way, and you've been so fortunate that your talents have taken you all over the world to do that stuff, and your music is, as you sort of were indicating, you're no stranger to Hawaii. Your music isn't either. When do you think your first time that you visited the islands was, John?
The first time I visited Hawaii, I remember exactly. It was the same type of scenario. It was one of the first tours I ever did in Japan, probably in the very early 80s or late 70s. And on the way back, to break up the trip, I think it was a friend of mine, I think a guitar player who was in the band, and myself, we just hung out in Hawaii for about 3 or 4 days. I think it was Maui that we went to the first time. And went all around the island. That was my first visit. That was way back then, and I've been coming back ever since.
And when you were over with Donovan on Kauai, did you guys actually play live anywhere where people could see you, or was it more just jamming together, working on songs?
No, we didn't. Actually, it was more of a vacation last August. Because he was busy, and he was only there for a day or so, and then he took off. But we hung out with his kids, and we surfed. My son was there, and my son was surfing and scuba diving. He just loves the ocean. He loves the whole, growing up in the mountains. He's a mountain kid, but he actually likes the beach a lot better. So that's what we did, and we're actually coming back again in August, back to Kauai, for Love, Hope, and Strength, which is a great bone marrow cancer charity that Donovan and I are both involved in. And we're going to do a whole week of concerts and hiking and water stuff, and all for the benefit of Love, Hope, and Strength, which is a really wonderful organization.
Wow, that's cool. And I had meant to ask you what sort of things moved you or were causes that you were close to. It's almost like you read my mind. How did you come to have them be something that you champion?
Well, I got turned on to it through Donovan, and he was in it, and they asked me to go on they do all these special events around the world, and one of the events they did this past year was a hike up Mount Fuji, and at the top they played a show, and it was a really cool thing, to create awareness for bone marrow cancer, and I couldn't make that particular one, but at that point I got involved. I actually invited them out to my last Songwriters Festival in Aspen, and they've become an integral part of that, and they're also involved this year. So we have a great relationship, and it's a wonderful organization, because what they do is they go to a lot of music events, and they set up a booth, and they just do a cheek swab, where it takes literally 2 seconds. It's painless, and they look for bone marrow matches, and it's very difficult to find. And it's just a fantastic, as I said, fantastic organization.
That's great that you're aligned with them and using your significant power that you bring to help others. I admire you for that even more than I already did. Something else that we have a few things in common, but one thing that I'm curious about, you're an early rock fan, and you really appreciated the roots of rock, and then ended up getting to play with some of the early soul guys and stuff. You must dig how the Blaisdell Arena once was rocked by Elvis, the place you're going to be playing on March 5th.
That's right. That was that famous show that they filmed.
Right. Aloha from Hawaii or whatever.
That's right. Well, you know what? It's hey, man. When you walk on some of these stages. Very early in our career, we did the Louisiana Hayride way down in I think it was actually in Arkansas. It wasn't in Louisiana, but it was called Louisiana Hayride, where Elvis played one of his first shows. So I guess coming full circle, anytime you step onto a legendary stage, it's always it's a humbling experience, and it's always something that you have to respect.
What are, for a guy whose music is heard everywhere and who's performed literally everywhere, what do you call a legendary stage?
Well, the Apollo Theater, Madison Square Garden, the Wheeler Opera House in Aspen, Colorado. For that.
My boy.
There's a lot of them. How about the Grand Ole Opry? I just played there for the first time 2 nights ago.
Celebrity salute for the troops.
Yep, with Ron White, and I played with the legendary Bonnie Bramlett. She sang with me from Delaney and Bonnie.
Yeah.
And they have a little piece of the original Grand Ole Opry, and they have the original wood inset into the stage in a circle right in the center of the stage. And when I sang, that's where I stood. And hey, yeah, it's pretty heavy.
It's like you were channeling the energy.
I wish. I hope.
And have you, finally on the Hawaii tip, have you previously done the arena? Are there some venues that you sort of remember bringing the band to here?
Well, I remember the band show.
The Waikiki show.
Yeah, I remember that very well, because we played that a number of times. And, we've also been back to Hawaii a lot of times under the radar. People don't realize it, but Daryl and I do a lot of private and corporate shows. And, Hawaii's, of course, being such an amazing tourist destination, they bring us out there a lot of times. So there's a lot of times when we're in Hawaii, no one even knows we're there. We're playing and hanging, so.
Under the radar. Right. We like that. You are... I'm curious about. We'll talk a little bit about Aspen, because I'm fascinated how you ended up there. But you, at what point was it that you departed the Philadelphia area, and what kind of connection do you maintain to it today?
Well, my folks live about 25 miles north of Philadelphia, which is where I grew up. I grew up in what was the country, and then became the suburbs. And they still live there, and my sister lives in New York. And then I, right after high school, right after college, actually, when I met Daryl, we both moved to New York very, very early on. So I left Philadelphia in 1970, and lived in New York from 1970 until the late 80s. And then in the late 80s, I decided to really kind of reinvent myself and kind of start life over again in a way. And I moved to Colorado, and I've never left. So I've been here since '88. So it's about 23 years. And I also just have my wife and I just got a place in Nashville, because we're doing so much work down there. And I've got so many good friends in Nashville. I just love it down there. So we kind of divide our time between Nashville and Aspen.
Okay, but you still, you feel like an emotional connection to Philly?
Oh, it's where I grew up, it's where my musical roots were formed. A lot of things about Philadelphia. It's not only the urban R&B tradition, the great tradition of R&B music that comes out of Philadelphia, and the soul tradition, but also the folk and traditional American music that was nurtured there with the Philadelphia Folk Festival, which was one of the earliest places where a lot of the great traditional musicians and blues musicians were rediscovered and got a chance to perform. All the great coffee houses and folk venues that dotted the Philadelphia area, because it was a hotbed of folk music. And so when I was growing up, even before I met Daryl, that's kind of my roots that precede Daryl is that, and that's kind of where I went with this new album. That's kind of when I got back to that pre-Hall and Oates, influences that made me kind of who I am.
You're talking about the Johnny O stuff?
Well, it's not Johnny O. It's called Mississippi Mile.
Okay, so but it's the same material that at one point you were mulling Johnny O?
My working title.
I like. Well, the reason I was asking the Philly stuff, Brother John, is because I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware.
Oh, okay, you got it.
And whenever I talk to anybody in the Philly posse, I usually ask, and with you, so that's why I was seeing When You Departed, I usually ask, are you a Jim's guy or are you a Pat's guy?
Do I have to have an allegiance to a cheesesteak?
I mean, most people usually do have.
Of all things in the world you can align yourself with, man, I guess I got to take one side of the fence or the other. I don't know. I like Jim's, I guess.
You're an animal. On South Street?
Yeah, I like it on South Street.
You're the king bee. I'm high-fiving you over there. I like that kind of talk. And Pierre Robert, was that somebody that you know?
What's that? I'm sorry?
There's a Philadelphia DJ. I was just curious. I had heard you knew him. Maybe it's not true. Pierre Robert?
I do not recall Pierre Robert. I go way back to the WMMR days when underground radio, FM radio first started. Gene Shea's Folk Hour on Sunday night was one of the most important radio shows I ever listened to because I got a chance to play on it and I got a chance to hear all the great early blues and Delta blues and folk performers who came through Philly in that time. So we go way back.
Yeah, MMR. He's MMR's midday guy since like the 80s on. And I definitely I second that. MMR is a great station. All those legendary Philly people. I was just curious. So you end up in Aspen. I've been reading a little bit about your life there, and quite different. By way of New York, you've done a few things along the way. I hear that you have like llamas and other animals. Can you try to describe your spread there and the sort of exotic wildlife that you share it with?
When I moved to Colorado, I just came out here for the skiing. Little did I know that I would marry the quintessential Midwest farmer's daughter and become a farmer. I like to call myself the reluctant rancher because it was kind of thrust on me, and I had to learn along the way. But we have a little ranch out here, and we call it the Rescue Ranch. And my wife loves animals, and she loves to find animals that are on their way to another place and bring them over here and let them have a great life. So we have emus with those giant birds from Australia. We have turkeys and peacocks and chickens, and we have llamas, alpacas, dogs, cats, snakes, all kinds of stuff. So it's a menagerie, and they live happily ever after here, and no one bothers them, and we just enjoy them, and we love it, and we try to provide clean water and good food and nice, lots of Colorado sunshine. Right now it's snowing like you can't believe, but the llamas and alpacas all love that stuff.
I love it, dude. This is unbelievable. And you have a laundry list of wildlife you just read there, and that requires a lot of maintenance. I mean, there's a lot of feeding and medical stuff and love and care. What percentage of the workload of that are you personally picking up?
We do it all. I mean, my wife's that's her thing. But we do it all. I mean, if we have a serious problem, of course, we call in a vet. But, we do all the kind of basic stuff. If an animal cuts himself, she goes out and, puts the betadine on them and cleans them up and, does that, gives them their, antibiotics and things like that. And, we have fresh water that's automatic water heaters because of the environment we live in, because it's so cold. And we throw them hay, and then in the summertime they've got pastures to graze in, and they're pretty self-sufficient. That's what we like about them. They just kind of do their thing, and they're out there and enjoying life. And people stop by on the road and look at them, and the kids love them. And the alpacas are about the cutest animals on earth, I think. But that's what we do. When we're away, we have a caretaker who takes care of things, and that's it.
Well, that's very cool. I love animals. I'm a huge animal lover. I think it's wonderful that your wife has that spirit and that you do too. Is there a particular one of the animals that you just said the alpaca is about the cutest animal on earth? Is there one animal that you really bond with that has a name that you enjoy spending time with?
Well, one of my dogs. We've got this dog named Jeepers, who's he's a mutt. They all come from the pound, but He's kind of this. He's got a personality. I think he was actually human at one point. So I have to say it was him.
That's cool. Well, that's the animals are a spiritual thing. Now, at this place in Aspen, is that where you're recording? Do you have a studio facility there?
Studio in my house. It's more of a songwriting studio that I use for writing, and when people come over, a good friend of mine has a really amazing studio here in town. If I ever want to do anything, full blown, I can go there, and I record most of my stuff in Nashville.
Okay, so you're doing the new record there in Nashville.
Yeah, I did it, and I actually recorded it there. It's already done. It comes out April 12th. It's called Mississippi Mile, and had some really amazing players on it, and great friends like Sam Bush and Jerry Douglas, and Mike Henderson from the Steel Drivers co-produced it with me. Becca Bramlett sang on it, so, lots of name dropping, but they're all great names.
That's awesome. I'm really proud of you that this is, so we have a date. It's going to be in April, and
12th, yep.
Yep, and it's already been fully recorded. Now, you're going to have just played, by my rough mathematical calculations, your next lineup of the 7908 Aspen Songwriters Festival, right?
That's right. That comes, we do that March 30th through April 2nd.
I see it on your roster. Give me the story of how this singer-songwriter series called The Stories Behind the Songs turned into that festival, and how much of a role you had in all of it.
Well, a few years back, after having done a bunch of songwriters in the round or in different places in the country, I thought that, Aspen it's a great music community. People love music here, and we have a wonderful venue called the Wheeler Opera House, which is a great acoustic venue. And I decided to put together a series of shows that I called The Stories Behind the Songs, and I invited Patty Griffin, Tiff Merritt, and Jimmy Wayne, who's a country singer, to come out and perform with me in the round, and people just loved it. And the city of Aspen actually approached me about a year or so after that, asked me if I would do that again and expand it into more of a festival, a longer event, which we did. And we did our first one last September. We moved it up to March this year because we wanted a better weekend, and this year I don't know if you got a chance to look at the website.
Oh, my brother, I sure did.
Yeah, it's not bad. In 6 months, we put that roster together, so I'm really proud of it.
Oh, I'd like to plug it. Sean Colvin, Kim Carnes, Keb Mo, John Hammond, Squeezes Glenn Tilbrook, and, of course, I must say, from the Garden Isle of Kauai, our own Donovan Frankenreiter.
Yes, exactly, and Matt Nathanson.
Yeah. Oh, is he? Who's Matt?
Matt Nathanson wrote that great song, Come On Get High, Loosen My Lips, Pull Me Down Hard, and Wrap Me in Love. Yeah. He wrote that, and he also wrote Glow, Donovan's last single.
And does he live out here, too?
No, he doesn't. He lives in, I believe he lives in Vermont.
You have so many cats that you've brought together for this thing, and I wonder, when you're collaborating with people as a songwriter like yourself, are your best tunes ones you've done with other people, or is an idea something that, often can be on your own? It just always seems like collaborations are where you've struck gold.
I think so. There's something magic about collaborating. People can sometimes, songwriters, like many things, when you get so involved in something, you can't see the forest for the trees, and sometimes you get tied to an idea that, an objective person or someone else, who's sympathetic to where you're coming from can see it and say, hey, man, that's cool, but if you did this, and you go, wow, I wouldn't think of that. So it's that kind of thing. And I've just been collaborating in Nashville. I just wrote 2 songs with some of the guys down there, and we just wrote some really cool songs. So, yeah, I do like collaboration. It's very self-satisfying, when you write something on your own. You have a real serious emotional, thing that you want to get across, and, you do it. But that's one thing, and there's a great satisfaction in that. But the other thing too is to do something that where the collaboration takes it to a whole other level.
Something like, I'm thinking of early Hall & Oates, Bebop Drop. Who was the writer on that one?
I was.
Dude, I love that. That's like one of your most rockin' jams.
Yeah, it's not one of our big ones, but definitely one that that's the thing about, and that's why Daryl and I did the box set, because we felt there was so much more to our songwriting and our whole lives than the great hits. We're very proud of our hits, obviously, and and that's what we're known for. But there's so much more substance in our songwriting and our careers and our catalog, and the box set was an opportunity for us to get that across.
Well, that's why I tried to throw it into a plug. I hope you're not offended.
Oh, no, are you kidding me? I love it. I love it when people like the album tracks.
Yeah, I was just watching the video of you at the Agora Ballroom or whatever.
I don't know which one you were watching, but I'm sure it was somewhat embarrassing.
No, you were slamming, my brother. No embarrassment at all. As we get ready to wrap it up, one of your biggest, I don't know if it's one of your biggest, you've done so many things. You're one of these guys, you hear your voice everywhere, you hear your music everywhere. Live Aid with Rufin and Kendrick. Where does that rank for you, and what else is a high point in terms of cherished memories?
Major. That was a major event. I think you have to put that in a context. You have to remember that was the first time, I believe, a pop music thing was televised around the world.
Mm.
It had the biggest, at the time, it was the biggest audience that had ever seen music. And we closed the show that night with in Philadelphia, because there was the English, London version and the Philadelphia version. And in Philadelphia, we closed the show with Tina Turner, Mick Jagger, Eddie Kendrick, and David Ruffin. Plus, we did our own set as well. So it was a major moment. I'll never forget it. Playing with Jagger and Tina and then Eddie and David, who were our childhood heroes. Doing the Temptations stuff, and it was just like mind blowing. I don't even know how to describe it.
That's awesome. That's cool that you feel that way. I got to interview Otis Williams of the Temps this summer. It was pretty cool. I was just thinking about all my Temp and Four Tops things because I was so mesmerized looking at video of you at the Live Aid thing. What are other ones that aside from Live Aid would be up there at the top?
Well, here again, performing with Eddie and David at the Apollo Theater. Which happened before Live Aid, and that's what led us to bringing them out at Live Aid. We got a chance to reopen the Apollo, and I think it was 86 or 85 or 86 when it had been closed for a while and it had been refurbished, and we were asked to open it, and that was a great honor. Living in New York at the time, being asked to play that legendary room with our heroes. So all that stuff was great stuff, gosh, so many things. When you play, you go to Europe for the first time, you play in London, you do Madison Square Garden, the big venues that are legendary. I think all those things are very, moments in time.
That's cool. I just wonder which ones are at the top of your list. And as a final thought, a lot of people are very excited for these shows, and it brings you with another formidable cat, and that's Daryl. And how much time do you spend with him when you guys are together working? And what would you tell Hawaii fans about Daryl Hall as a performer today that they are going to see live?
Well, Daryl and I don't spend a lot of time, when we're not working because we live in different parts of the world. We both have our individual projects, and I think that's part of the reason we're still together and still enjoy working together, because we both have the individual freedom to do whatever we want. We don't restrict each other in any way, and I think that's still one of the reasons we're still around. In terms of him as a personality, he's a force of nature in a way. He sings better today than he's ever sang. He's one of the greatest singers, without a doubt, that I've ever heard, and I get to stand next to him, so I can tell you firsthand. So he's powerful, and he has a lot of charisma, and a fantastic songwriter. He's one of those guys that he brings a lot to the table, and it's been a really I've learned things from him over the years. Hopefully, I think he's learned things from me. We function in different ways. He's more of the show pony. I'm a little bit more the nuts and bolts guy. But it works, and that's how it is.
It's a remarkable effort you guys do, and I know it may have taken a long time for you to get the credit for being the songwriters and the performers that you are, but just know a lot of people really appreciate the magic when you guys come together.
Thanks, man. We like it too.
I know. I just want to make sure I put it out there and let you know that, Brother John. And as a final note, would you be willing, when you guys get to Oahu here in Honolulu, would you be willing to record a short interview with me?
I would. We'll have to just check what Daryl's schedule is. If you could coordinate that through Jonathan Wolfson, I'm sure we can probably make that happen.
Okay, but at least on your end, and I'll try hard on the Daryl end. But if you would be willing to, we're public.
I usually come early to the sound check backstage, so it would probably be a backstage thing. And just if you try to coordinate that through Jonathan or Brian at Wolfson's office, I'm sure we can try to make that happen.
Yep, no, I'll coordinate it with Brian. I just wanted to put the bug in your ear, so when he reached out to you, it wasn't some foreign concept. Because we're the NPR station, we'd really like to talk to you. We're totally listener-supported, so it'd mean a lot, I'm sure, to our listeners.
Great, and I'll bring a copy of the album for you when I come over. Aloha, this is John Oates of Hall & Oates. Tune in to the only show that matters with my friend Dave Lawrence. Aloha, this is John Oates of Hall & Oates, and you're listening to the only show that matters with my friend Dave Lawrence. Hey everybody, this is John Oates of Hall & Oates, and I'm hanging out with my friend Dave Lawrence, wishing you an enjoyable 420. Let him have it, Brother Dave.
Very cool. Thank you, John.
Okay, man.
Have a good day. I'll talk to you soon.
That we see you in Hawaii. Can't wait.
I hope so. I hope this was not too much of a hassle.
All right, man. No worries.
Take care. Be safe. Aloha.